It is October the 1st, 2016. I'm Dana, the host of nuclearproctologist.org, and you can find these videos throughout the entire internet, which is the right place for them. And we are so grateful that we are afforded that ability. I spent all day downloading 600 songs and plutonium files, so I can't run out of music for a long time. Let's wind that down and get into the show. Good day, everybody. Hello, everybody. I hope everybody's doing good. And I killed it. I killed it too fast. We're supposed to down with the music. That's okay. Next time. We got quite the story for everybody today. I got me zooming in, zooming out, zooming around. Who knows? Who cares? The big story is we are here and we are talking. Hugs to everybody. Amthers, Miss Milky. Hi, everybody. Hugs, everybody. And we smurfed that up. I think, did I? Go to cut. Maybe it'll zoom back. There we be. And Elaine, you're on monitor again tonight and permanently, but it looks to things. Unless you don't want it, you let me know. It's not an issue. And hi, Elaine, Amthers, Jan, good sound there. Dana has a pop in his step. Amthers, hi, everybody. Boydie, and Biddy, rather. Boydie. Dana making up names as we go along. I posted twice. That was an accident. But it worked. I meant to say the diamond's right here. And then I was like, no, Jan is there. Purple gem. I'll throw out a pun. Hello, everybody. It's Saturday night. Saturdays, we like to say hi to everybody right away. Karen, and I'm not going to get everybody because I'm half blind sometimes. Just making sure I got everybody. Hi, Brian, William, anybody I don't get, my apologies. I'm just one man. Candace, hi, everybody. Let's keep it rocking, keep it rolling. We'll come back over and visit everybody in a wee little tiny bit. Change formats. And kind of change formats. Up there tonight. So, when radioactive fallout happens from any accident anywhere, no matter how minute it is, it has to go somewhere. Excuse me. But I think the little story that we got, now Japan Times says I don't script. They're so wrong. Where did he think all this shit comes from? Did he think I just it falls out of the sky into my lap or something, and I magically know what to do with it, and magically know how to talk about it? But anyway, just annoying people would say something like that about me. When, how can you do the things I'm doing without being scripted? Yeah, I'm not scripted like a book. Why would I be? How boring would that be? So plutonium uptake is one of the ways radioactive fallout assimilates into the environment. So what we're going to talk about tonight is how radioactive fallout assimilates into the environment and why it's found in the environment the way we're going to show tonight. And so what they're talking about here is white blood cells. And they're looking at the intake of radioactive material and how it ends up in your blood cells. And so these are the same white blood cells. They're made in your joints, in your spleen. Your spleen is specifically to make the white blood cells, but you actually make them in your joints too, eh? Because, if you've got a cut finger, the white blood cells can come right from the joints. Now, simultaneous determinations of radiocesium-137 and 135 are tracers. These are tracers. And just about everything you're going to see, you will see a wide variety of radionuclides that they alluded to. But all the studies, except for plutonium, obviously, but most of the studies are going to mention cesium-137. And Elaine's back, okay. And Elaine's moderating, and we truly appreciate it. A method for determination of plutonium and radiocesium isotopes was developed. And due to the radioisotope releases in the Fukushima Daiichi, whatever you call it. Okay, well, there's 30 million one-ton bags for starters cleaned up, allegedly. And when you dig up all that topsoil, you broke up the root structure that was holding the soil in place. And so when you have rain or anything like that, heavy winds and dry weather, etc., because you had dug up 30 million, think about that, though, 30 million one-ton bags. And so that's 30 million trucks with one-ton trucks. They're 20 feet or something each. And if you put them bumper to bumper so they're scratching each other, that's 5 rows of traffic right around the planet. You couldn't cross the road with your vehicle, per se, right? Because 5 rows, each row was touching itself the entire way around the planet. 30 million one-ton trucks. There's many ways to visualize it, but it's just, when they talk about there's no impact and stuff like that, you know, at the bottom of it, the bottom of the page down here, you can see different isotopes. We'll start moving fairly quickly here. So soil reference. Now in soil, when you dig up soil, you got bacteria, you got the root system itself, but you got all kinds of insects and microbes and everything else that lives in that scoop of soil you took out of fertile ground, yeah? It's important to think about these kinds of accumulation of plutonium and mammalian wildlife tissues following a dispersal by accidental release test. Too many screens happening. And accumulation of absorbed plutonium, which is man-made. This is really bad stuff, and there was a lot of it came out of Japan. We're going to talk about it. And Chernobyl quite a bit. The distribution would go into the skeletons. The lungs and the livers are also highly impacted. You know, when you think about Fukushima and the history of science, we've never seen anything like the Fukushima plume. And that was not just a single plume. And the plume doesn't stop coming out. It's not like a plume rose up in the air and then drifted away, and that was the end of it, and it started spreading out over time. But there was no plume behind it, say, or something like that. It's not how this happened, how it played out. But why is Japan allowed to get away with contaminating the ocean? This model is by France. It's a model of Fukushima. It's only modeling 2 isotopes, the actual tracers, iodine-131. Now, you can see it has immediately covered North America, the width of the Pacific, the width of the Atlantic, and right here, the width and the distance of Europe. And can you tell a difference in the color? When you think about the releases, they didn't include all the reactor buildings. They don't include all the reactors. Let's look at them right quick. This is Unit 1. It had 5 reactor cores in the pools. Now, this is a front cutout. They're gone. And I'll just marry them together for you. Anytime you're ready, Dina. Okay, there you go. Do it automatically. Let's see, I'm not touching nothing. Not touching nothing. I got a little echo going on there. No, I thought I had the extra audio turned on or something. Okay, just right quick. Unit 3. 6 reactor cores were in the fuel, or 5, and at least 5. And then 1 was right up high here. Now, when you bring these pictures together, you can see 6 reactor cores are gone. Again, that's 12 reactor cores. We know where that one went. It went a couple of thousand feet straight up, yeah? We'll come right back to those studies, though. Now, this is the same principle again. That's Unit 4 over there, and this the modeling of Unit 4. You see that bulb at the top in the center? Now, you look at the picture over there. It's on the side down low. And what that is, that's the reactor core. It's gone. And then above it were the pools, yeah? That's indisputable, incontestable. That what I'm telling you, what I'm showing you, what I'm begging the world to look at. I'm begging this planet. I'm begging this entire planet to get their act together and save this planet. We're only allowed so much time to save this planet. We got to save the planet. And we got to save the species on this planet, and including the humans. But just a quick reminder, the tsunami ran through that country. And I'm going to show you the damage the tsunami caused right quick. It's after the cleanup. And before the cleanup, you can see the pile of debris. You can see the carnage. You see the heartbreak and the misery. You can imagine the agony. And you can easily visualize the enormity. Over 400 kilometers, the red is where all the people died. And that same zone is that was crushed and put through that wood chipper that we were looking at is where there was 15 power plants. It's the same area where they got 30 million one-ton bags, and it's the same area where they say there's 15 reactors affected. It's the same area where a Fukushima governor had strongly demanded that they decommission at least 10 of the reactors that were completely destroyed. And that's why you got 30 million one-ton bags. See? Let's go back to the studies. And just to keep everybody on track. And that's why that plume, that doesn't include all those reactors I just showed you at all. It doesn't include the inventories that were in just a single reactor. And that the plume, once again, let's watch that plume one more time. Now watch, it never stops coming out of Japan. It's not stopped coming out. We're up to day 20, day 21, day 22 is still coming out of Japan. Day 24, 25, 26. Now, the model stopped, but it didn't stop coming out of Japan. And it wasn't just cesium and iodine. And there was a lot more of it than what the modeling is showing. You have to keep that into that narrative. Spontaneous lesions in animals, in rats, and dogs. And this study is in the Dr. Raymond Gilmedi. I was all over their place today, too. They're a Navy facility, by the way, Gilmedi. 67 years, 68 years, they've been killing animals. But this is another, and there's just thousands and thousands of these institutions killing dogs and all kinds of animals all the time. And so the data from a total, the rats, 418 males, 423 females, 144 beagle dogs, was used from placebo, vehicle treated control group, blah, blah, blah. The lesions in the various glands were classified according to the species. Come down to about right here, this sentence. 110 weeks of age among the proliferative lesions in rats, higher incidence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They go all the way down in beagle dogs. The adrenaline glands, 18 to 20 months old, in the dogs. Now we talk about studies of the beagle dogs all the time, and every dog dies within 5 years from the plutonium studies. I'm just trying to build a picture in increments. The differences in effects on radiation and abundance of animals in Chernobyl and Fukushima. Radioactive contamination can negatively affect the abundance of life beings through the radiation. And so we got some good studies coming up to talk about that. But if you look up here, spiders, grasshoppers, dragonflies, bumblebees, cicadas, birds, at 1,198 sites in Chernobyl and the Fukushima Daiichi, where major nuclear accidents happened 25 years and then 6 months ago, respectively. The mean level of radiation was higher and less variable at Fukushima than at Chernobyl. Ain't that interesting? That's very unusual for anybody to say there was more came out of, and this was 6 months after the accident. How unusual is it? Now, we haven't covered, I don't think, these studies here because I hooked all these today on purpose because I couldn't do the documentary today. I just couldn't get into that gear. I tried to make videos in the morning, couldn't get in gear. I went through all the work, all the process. I tried my best. I couldn't do it. And so I went and done this plutonium show that we're doing tonight, put that together. Scripted, Mr. Japanese Times. Thank you very much. What do you think? I just make this shit up? That I just, this stuff falls right out of the sky for me? Where do you think that comes from, folks? But, and so, blah, 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 sure, maybe do it. Anyway, these people are very skewed. Biological consequences of Chernobyl 20 years on. And I lost my train of thought, but we're going to show you that the disaster of Chernobyl nuclear power plant. This is a study at Elsevier. And Elsevier and Springer and Wiley have 20,000 of the biggest publications on the planet. And you get the copyrights from all the institutions for free. Yeah. And then it's locked up behind a paywall. And most of these have got only 6 or 7 people have read it. I didn't have a big enough, wide enough screen to show you on that one. But 200,000 kilometers of land in Europe from an academic study. No, Dana, it didn't happen. But Chernobyl was only 1/3 the size of any of the reactors, and Chernobyl didn't have 5 or 6 reactor cores on the roof. Like, that on its own is just the most frightening thing imaginable, the most devastating news conceivable. It's the most unimaginable betrayal, too. It should have never happened because we would have known this could have happened. Okay. So this model, I'm going to turn the sound down just in case there's something playing. But this model is Chernobyl. Here's Chernobyl going off. It's just a paper towel compared to Fukushima. This is an acceptable model. This model is not including all the isotopes or anything like that. It's just the cesium-137. And then what it's, the date now, and this is by the hour you're looking at. Okay, hour 1, 2, 3 on the 29th. This was the 26th, right? So day 2. Now you can see how the plume, the disposition, that's all it really needs is a single plume. It's still coming out of Chernobyl. Chernobyl is that red dot. Look, it's still pumping out of there, still pumping up. See that red? That's the pump. That's the heavy duty stuff on its way up. So so far it still hasn't stopped coming out of there. Now this chain reaction lasted for 10 days. Look at this creature, this monster. Look at how it meanders around the continents and around this planet. And once again, I'm going to skip ahead on that due to time restriction. And then it's got like 30 seconds left. We'll just let it play out. Think about that model. 200,000 square kilometers of land highly contaminated. They can't sell the land or drink the meat, drink the milk or eat the meat in parts of Ireland, Scotland, UK. And we got a study on Sweden coming up. But Sweden's freshwater, we haven't got that one, but Sweden had closed its freshwater fishery for 28 years because of this single accident. And they didn't eat reindeer anymore, except on special occasions in northern Ukraine, in Latvia, I think it was. And then there was other places that were highly contaminated from Chernobyl. Chernobyl, remember, that's 30 years ago. And they still can't, in parts of Ireland and Scotland, drink the milk or sell the land. But Fukushima, they just said the hell with it. Fukushima, they instead of doing what they're supposed to do, which is run around screaming, oh shit, they did nothing. Ecological lessons from the Chernobyl accident. In 86, not only caused serious ecological problems both to Ukraine and Belarus, and Kofi Annan had said in 2000 at the United Nations podium, on the podium to the entire planet, and all those big $500,000 TV cameramen sitting there, it was broadcasted that there was 3 million children with permanent disabilities. And Fukushima is going to kill Japan for sure. And it has already killed the Pacific. And we documented that on the coastline. So Wet and acidic up. Okay, hang on. Let me come back a notch. I lost track of what I was doing at that point. Okay, try this again. Consequently, the ministry banned the sale and movement of sheep over large areas of upland Britain, with bans remaining on some farms to the present day. And when was this study? 2005. But it's still present. It's still happening there. It's still all of this is still applicable. So, next one. I'm getting there. DNA damage in barn swallows from the Chernobyl region detected by the use of Comet assay. And they're investigating in one of their studies a level of DNA damage in blood cells of barn swallows because it gets into your blood is solutable in water. They're only looking at cesium, I think, in this study, if I remember correctly. Once again, you should be looking at plutonium. You should be looking at uranium because that's what the reactors run on. But you won't get any money to fund a study on that. I'm going to have a cigarette. My cigarettes actually don't have 3,000 chemicals. They're called CNTs, Canadian Natural Tobacco. And if you look for natural tobacco, you start asking smoke shops. Go to smoke shops, like dedicated smoke shops, and ask them about natural tobacco. They'll tell you everything you want to know right there and then. And so getting rid of 7,000 chemicals is huge. I'm not saying smoking is good. I'm not pretending that it is. I am saying that being addicted for 30 years, 35, 40 years, 42 years, there's a huge difference to smoke these. You go from 2 packs a day fairly quickly down to about 10 cigarettes a day. I still enjoy my cigarette, even though I know you shouldn't enjoy a cigarette. But it does not have 7,000 chemicals. And so all the studies in your institutions were all on nicotine. They weren't on the 7,000 chemicals that are in the average cigarette. So they didn't take a cigarette and take it to 7,000 chemicals and then study the nicotine because you couldn't do it. So anyway, they were talking about chronic exposure to radioactive contaminants, even 20 years after the accident, is the bottom couple of sentences. At the Chernobyl nuclear power plant continued to induce DNA damage in cells of free-living animals. These are animals that could be migratory, et cetera, and usually are. Chernobyl fallout. Now, Chernobyl has a huge forest fire problem because the radiation killed the bacteria, the microscopic world, and it doesn't break down. It doesn't break down debris, the trees in the forest, the dead trees. Chernobyl fallout in the Swedish spruce forest ecosystem. So the radioactive material gets up in the sky and floats around and gets assimilated into everything is what we're basically going to learn about and what you're learning about right now. 95% of the 137 cesium in the system to be the Chernobyl origin. And the data show that approximately 80% of the total fallout is found in soil. 87% of the total fallout is uptaked into the soil. It's assimilated into the roots of the system. And so like pine trees in Japan, they traditionally collect the tips of the needles for a tea. And the tips of the needles were brutally high in radiation. Mushrooms is another one. And spinach is another one that really aggregate a stupid amount of radiation. These are things you want to avoid at all costs. You have to avoid it at all costs. Your Geiger counter is not able to pick up wet disposition. You have to draw your food out and get a $50,000, $100,000 system to find out how much radiation is in your food. You can find it if it's landing on your food. Which reminds me, we're supposed to have a Geiger counter up in the right-hand corner. So 167 counts per minute, that's live. 185 counts per minute. So 150 is a unisiever per minute. 220 counts per minute. These numbers, like 55 is evacuation zone. 5, you store it on a nuclear waste site in France. 17 in Germany, Beckles. 186. So if I had food here, atoms are landing on it. You can't get away from it. You can't escape it. You could if you lived in a different part of Canada because we're right by the Pacific Ocean. I chose to stay here longer than I should. Something has to be done. People have to be warned. People have to be told. and this is the front line. And I have already sacrificed myself anyway on the Fukushima expeditions for 200 days on the coastline, on that naked coastline. Let's talk about that later, just at the end of the show, maybe if I remember. Okay, earthworm population in soil contaminated. It was a rather interesting one. The ratio, only one species of earthworms were found in that study. But they didn't study all the other animals that would have lived in the soil with the worms. For some reason, they don't mention that in that. Not that I got access to the full journal. You see the big purchase sign up in the corner. Like I could blow through. I bet you I could blow through $5,000 a week in studies if I was wealthy. I would. That's all I would do if I was wealthy. I know that about me. I'd buy everything they got probably if I had enough money. I have a thirst for knowing for sure. I have to know things for sure. I'm that kind of person before I say things. But they didn't study all the other insects because they weren't there, and they only found one species of worm, so they studied it. And that's what you take away from that one. See how that works? Long-term genetic effects of radiation exposure. Hi, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Yeah, thank you, Karen. And thank you for your comments. I read them. I read everybody's comments. Unless you piss Elaine off and she removes them. Outside of that, I read every comment. There's no restriction on Elaine. Elaine can do whatever she wants. She has full reign. She has full authority. And it's not going to change unless she asks us to step down. And once again, each night I'll remind everybody the fortitude that lady has. And that's why she earned that position. And I'm grateful for her to take that on. It's a tough job, trust me. She's not going to get rid of anybody. She'll put them on timeout if the worst case scenario, if they're just off topic all the time or something. Or whatever she chooses. To date, there has been little experimental knowledge and genetic risk of human exposures. They had 800 pregnant women in the States. I can't remember. Was it Stanford or MIT? And they were giving the women, telling them to come to the hospital, pregnant women. You like this story. This is like the horror story of horror stories. Where a PhD, a doctor, a scientist, an academic, big shot, straight and narrow, science is the way to go, tricked the women by telling them it was vitamin drinks and vitamin shots, a.k.a. vitamin. So 800 women were ingested, drinking plutonium, cesium, uranium, strontium-90 from the chain reaction. And they were told it was vitamin drinks, and they were pregnant. And so ultimately, they dug up all the bodies, and they confiscated all the children that died, and the fetuses that were born premature, without telling the loved ones, in secret. For the majority of it, they got caught a few times. This is the story came out. But this is academics. This is people we're supposed to put our faith into. Scientists. Why would I want to trust any scientist on the planet ever again after that? How could you? How could you put your faith in these people ever again? All these studies are based upon just a tracer. They don't bother going for the real stuff, and they don't have the integrity to do it on their own. It's all about getting big funds from the government and coming out with stories that mitigate everything. But nuclear, there's a million corporations dependent upon it. Full-time jobs. Year-round jobs, not seasonal jobs, not part-time jobs, not low-paying wage jobs, but full benefit, twice the wage of the highest people in your community for, like carpenters or journeyman welders or pipe fitters. People at a nuclear power plant, most of them couldn't get a job in a coffee shop. Not that that's bad. I'm just saying they're so dysfunctional they couldn't work in that environment. Didn't get my cigarette like I wanted. Sometimes I got to have a cigarette without the 9,000 chemicals, 7,000 chemicals. Did I say 9,000 chemicals? What the frig was I just thinking about? I wonder. Where the hell did 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures? They were in those reactors when they were burning down. Okay, so birds, high frequency of tumors and albinism. And so they get these little white patches on their feathers, and on their chest is another famous spot for it around the thyroid. If birds got thyroids, I don't know about that one. But it would be with a human. But high frequencies of tumors in free-living birds around Chernobyl. Now, free-living. Scientists call that because they like to keep their animals caged. They'll put them in warehouses and store them like monkeys for decades. Because monkeys live a long time, right? They'll store them for a decade and take them out of storage. These animals have zero, these are highly intelligent animals with zero mobility. Kept in storage. Loveless respiratory, known to do it many times. And up to a decade. And put them back in experiments again. HIV, AIDS, tuberculosis. I can't even pronounce the word tonight. I'm thinking about something else, obviously. Official Chinese press, Fukushima contamination is a serious international environmental issue, and crisis concerns the core interests of people who share the planet. Official Chinese press. August 23rd, 2013. Die-off of mammals, birds, reptiles in the western U.S. So many diseases afflicting such a wide variety of animals. The names are out of a science fiction thriller. Hemorrhagic diseases, plague, studies underway to find out why, to make up shit. To make it up. Studies are underway to make it up is what that headline should say. Because that's exactly what they're doing, see? Chernobyl, prenatal loss of 400 male fetuses in the Czech Republic. And so, for some reason, they looked at males, because there's more males born than females as a sign of in any animal population of a strong population, when there's a lot of males born ratio to females. That's why men fight over women all the time, because there's more men than women. And where there's not, there soon will be. I can assure you, because men are like that. They'll find that spot and get a home and settle down very quick. Fukushima radioactive tanks may have already been emptied into the Pacific Ocean. And that's China's media reporting on it. And that was in 2013 again, right? So China was pushing back. And there was this big conflict where America was picking up for Japan all the time, right? Which is part and parcel of the conflict. But I'm not scripted, so don't worry about it. Trends in human sex odds at birth in Europe and the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. To investigate trends in the sex odds before and after, gender-specific annual birth statistics were obtained from the Czech Republic, Denmark, Finland, Germany, Hungary, Norway, Poland, Sweden. Why did you go to all of those places, I wonder? Huh? Why? Huh? Why? And Chernobyl was just a paper towel. Well, look what they've done. Radioactive contamination of the aquatic ecosystem following the Chernobyl accident. Once again, let me remind you, 30 million one-ton bags, and it's right by the ocean. So it didn't all go into the ocean. It didn't all blow out to sea, did it? And you picked up 30 million. 30 million! Imagine if I gave you a pickup truck and told you to move it. 30 million one-ton bags. You'd be saying, I hope you like to pay overtime. And there is no number they won't pay to cover it up. There is nothing they will not do to cover that up. The dynamites of the radioactive contaminations of the ecosystem is considered on the basis of observational data in the near and distant zones of the Chernobyl fault. And Chernobyl was about 600 kilometers away from the ocean. It did have a direct route there through the river. And the reactor can't survive without a huge river. And the Patriot River, the reservoirs, the inlets, the Gulf of Finland, radionuclide accumulation, and aquatic biota is analyzed. They know it's there. They know where it's to. It's in everything. It's everywhere. Let's keep burning. accumulations. The results obtained indicate that the radiological conditions in the water bodies under investigation were in a state of non-equilibrium over a long period of time following the Chernobyl accident. In other words, it didn't get back to normal. Reduction to 137, concentration, proceeded. Excuse me. Now, cesium is different. It's soluble in water, except for the sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs that were coming out of the reactors when they were spraying the salt water on it. But reduction in 137 cesium. Well, okay. How about uranium? How about plutonium? How about technetium-99? How about strontium-90? How about, the reactors run on uranium. The biggest product is curium. Curium acts just like plutonium. Plutonium killed every dog in every study for 67 years at Loveless and everywhere else. And so they allude to these later on in the study. They're able to get access to that one. So you can see the wide variety of radioactive isotopes that they're alluding to. Technetium-132, zirconium-95. And interestingly, they were looking at 144 and 141 cesium. Or curium. I can't remember what that is now. Fukushima melted fuel is drifting in the ocean onto the land, lacking any containment. It ends up on the coastline and blows into the communities. Now, the plume I showed you before was the airborne plume. Right around the entire planet. It never stopped coming out of there. It was continuously coming out of there when the model stopped. It wasn't like it stopped coming out of there and then a couple of days later the model stopped. No, it was still coming out the very day the model stopped in every model from every country. And we've covered, I don't know how many of these things. People get an exceptional dose. Health harm will go on for thousands, if not tens of thousands of years. Kind of like Fukushima and Chernobyl. These are things that'll never stop. So if you have a nuclear reactor in your country, in your community, and there's an accident, right away, think about a nuclear power plant, there's 6 times more breast cancer. But if you're going to look at the real damage, because cancer is the last one to show up, you would look for diabetes or Alzheimer's, because that shows up long before cancer. You look for autism, because it will show up long before cancer. You look for heart and liver and lung and respiratory, pituitary, adrenaline, and we'll show you some of that coming up. We already have. Radioactive contaminations from different anthropods from different tropic levels in the hilly and mountainous areas around Fukushima. And what did I have poked there? Fukushima radioactive plume will continue to hit the shores of the U.S. and Canada, and possible to remove the molten core for hundreds of years if ever, and the flow of contamination for the plant will be virtually impossible to stop. And so back to that study, we're just looking for radioactive contamination in anthropods. In order to understand the influences, you got to admit that there's a problem. You got to admit that there's multiple melter reactors. You got to admit that each building had 6 reactor cores in it. You got to admit that there was 400 kilometers of the coastline, that there was 15 reactors in that zone. There was common spent fuel pools on the grounds of 3 of those big plants with tens of millions of pounds total. And that a pound would kill everybody on the planet in increments of 20 minutes and lots of 1,500 peoples. Or you can have 5 million buildings with 1 pound in each building and get everybody on the planet, 1,500 people in each building, you kill everybody in 20 minutes. And then people can show up here in 2 million years and do it again. The same stuff. You got nowhere to put it. You keep this fable alive that they're going to build all these reactors, but you got nowhere to store it, and so you can't do it. It won't happen. You can posture, you can get it started, you can start doing it, but you can't complete the job because you can't get rid of the fuel you already got. You got nothing to do with it. You got nowhere to put it. If you do bury it under the ground, you wreck your country forever. It's the end of your country permanently. At some point, it's going to come back. It might be 100 years if we live that long. Like, we got to deal with it. We can't pretend that it's like a banana or potato chip, another second, another minute, a nanosecond. We can't do that anymore. This is the problem where the scientists are telling everybody, for the nuclear industry, of course, a big fable that is like a banana. It's like potassium-40 in a banana, potassium-40 in your drinking water, potassium-40 in your clothing, something that we're acclimated to already through genetic superior selection. But we have terrorist laws. We have nuclear holding sites. We actually don't even have a waste site. You can't make a waste site. You can't contain it because of the noble gases, and that the noble gases only need oxygen. They don't need a spark. And so if you put it in sarcophagus and put it deep into a repository way down in the ground, at some point it'll corrode, and then oxygen will get in, it'll detonate. A chain reaction, 9,000 degrees Fahrenheit, will set off the rest of it. Then you will lose the planet. If you have a solar flare hit this planet, we will lose the planet because of the nuclear power plants. Won't be able to shut down. Won't be able to go into cold shutdown. We'll go into a station blackout. And it's the same thing for the common spent fuel pools. And America is just unbelievably full of common spent fuel pools, like Russia, like France, like India and Pakistan and Israel and Canada. We only need to lose one of those pools in any country to destroy your country. But it's in increments over time. It's not like everybody just falls dead. I wouldn't say that for the homeless at Fukushima. Alpha radioactive isotopes monitoring of the human body contamination by trace of ion presence. Radioactive contamination of fishes in lakes and streams. They're talking about airborne radiation. Contamination. See, most of the studies on the Hiroshima and Nagasaki victims were external. Not all of them. Some independent ones were done, but all the big shakers and movers on the planet, like Harvard and Berkeley and Stanford and everybody, their studies were on external only. Kathleen Higley, John Boyce, people like this, academics, didn't study internal doses. They didn't study the ingestion. They didn't study the uptake of food and water. And so 137 is just a tracer. But we can find it with the Geiger counter. But the Geiger counter you see up there can find it. Concentrations of 137 in brown trout was higher than in rainbow trout. They eat different food. 137 concentrations of brown trout in lake was higher than in a stream. So the stream is moving water, whereas a lake is steady water. And concentration of stream char was higher in regions with higher aerial activity, which is the radioactive fallout from the model I showed you earlier, from Fukushima and from Chernobyl. And concentrations of the 137, but whenever we say 137, it's imperative that I always mention that it's just a tracer and that it means many, many, many of the other 12,000 isotopes. So when you get a big number of one, you got a big number of all the other ones, each one of them. That's how that works, right? And so the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant event in March, this is like a meteorite hitting our planet, except it's invisible and you can't see it or smell it or taste it or hear it or feel it or pick it up or throw rocks at it. Emitted radioactive substances into the environment, contaminating a wide array of organisms. Orgasms. That's a better word, I think. Including fishes. Just Dana being silly. My apologies, anybody found that offensive? It's a good thing you don't get too close to me when I'm normally talking, because you will be offended many times. I'm just, like everybody out there, I'm just a normal person who's forced to be articulating and forced to be cautious. I'm forced to be right. And so if I make a mistake, it gets chopped up and then used to bludgeon me and then to bludgeon opposition. We found higher concentration of radioactive cesium in brown trout than in the rainbow trout. Our analysts indicate that these differences were primarily due to differences in diet, but the habitat also had an effect, right? So big surprise that a stream and a pond have different effects. What? Really? Yeah, because the trout are living in a stream, they're hit under the banks, and the water's rushing past them, so the radiation is flying down past them. It's getting hung up and everything, don't get me wrong. But in a pond, it's suspended. It's like a snowstorm underwater. But the snow doesn't fall. It goes all the way to the ocean floor, and it stops and all sits wherever it's still. Think about it in that context. Because you're talking about something that's one millionth to 1/10,000th a millionth of a meter. So take a meter divided by 10,000, divide that by a million. And you put 2 million on the head of a needle, you can't see it. But it only takes one of them to give you an autoimmune deficiency, one of the 1,800 autoimmune deficiencies. That'll show up a decade before the cancer, so to speak. It's emblematic that you got cancer when they show up. Effects of the nuclear disaster if you're contaminated. Effects of the disaster on marine products in Fukushima. Did I miss something during that time? Oh, yeah, Wall Street Journal. They don't know where the Fukushima melted fuel cores are or in what state. August 22nd, 2013. It's important to think of the worst case scenario. Yeah, really? I'll go along with that. Even greater levels of contamination beyond the way. And the plant is built on the river. When you're talking about trout and stuff like that, how it's assimilated there, and then you're talking about the plants built on the rivers heading right into the ocean, trout are not no different in many ways than saltwater fish, yeah? I guess swim bladders, blah, blah, blah. Effects of the nuclear disaster on marine products, they got gills, you know what I mean? They're surrounded by the effects of the nuclear disaster on marine product in Fukushima. After the release of huge amounts of radionuclides into the ocean from the devastated Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, safety concerns have arisen about marine products in the Fukushima prefecture. Now, if you look at the modeling of the currents of the coastline in Japan, it whisks the water straight out off the coastline. It does bring it along the coastline. Yeah, some of it will go along the coastline because the whole country is running down to the shoreline. Right? All the water runs to the ocean, you know? And Japan is all hills, yeah? And so there's many facets for it to get there. 137, so we're going to start bombing through this because we only got 10 minutes or so left. I want to come over and say hi to everybody before we call it a night. 137 cesium irrigation waters and its effect on the paddy fields in Japan, on the rice paddy fields. Look, why would you buy anything from Japan? How could you buy anything from Japan when it comes to food? How could you conceive that they checked it, it's below their standard. They've raised their standard every other day for the last almost 6 years. You literally have to be stupid. You have to be the most gullible and naive person imaginable. Literally. It's not a bad thing. I'm not saying you're a bad person because you're gullible or you're naive, that you trust the system. You were lulled into that. It's not your fault. So I shouldn't have probably said it that way. My apologies to that single person out there that I probably just offended. I didn't mean to. I swear. 137 cesium, once again, is just tracer. It's irrelevant. There's 100 times more strontium-90. The reactors are running on uranium plutonium, the biggest byproduct of radiative fuel rods, which is the biggest amount of fuel that was actually lost because they were stored in the common spent fuel pools on the ground and also on the roofs of the buildings. 6 reactors in each building. 5 of them were fuel rods stored in pools because they were already through a chain reaction. Once the elements went through a chain reaction, they're 2 million times worse. Reactor 3 in Japan, they use reclaimed uranium, reclaimed plutonium, so now it was 2 million times worse again. This is why we call these hot particles everything that come out of number 3, which was 6 reactors. Chernobyl is insignificant. Like, once again, it's just a paper towel. But look at the damage I've already showed about Chernobyl. Fukushima race to go on sale. Remember that? I've done a video about it, actually. Cute little 2-minute video or something where I was simulating myself into the pictures. Fukushima race to go on sale in the UK. So these people are batshit crazies. And 137, they're not looking for curium. They're not looking for plutonium. They won't even try. It's very expensive to do it. They have no intentions of making it public if they do show it. But this is a slap in your face. This is spitting on you. This is taking a big whatever on you. In the UK, they hate you with a passion. I'm going to sneak it in there. And that was when the UK was with the European, right, the EU. And if they could have got it in, they probably did. If they could have got it in at that point, then all the other European Union countries would have had to take it by proxy. That's what makes the EU so dangerous, so friggin' scary, so idiotic, and so moronic, so dangerous in every sense of that word. These are dangerous people. Everybody that's involved in the nuclear industry is a friggin' dangerous person. Everybody in the nuclear industry that had any job in the nuclear industry and didn't walk away and go get psychological help are dangerous people. I could rip people apart here right now if I want to, but I'm not going to. We're going to finish off with what I'm doing. We described radioactive contamination of birds' nests after the Fukushima accident. The amount of radioactive cesium inside the nest boxes increases with the nest weight. So once again, we talked about the branches and bark and stuff like that. Or did we? It'll probably show up here in a little time, but if we didn't. But anyway, how the birds are being contaminated just by making a nest. Plutonium in wildlife and soil. This was UK and Australia. And they were carrying out nuclear tests in Australia. The UK was. Oh, yeah, I did put it there. 800 kilometers northwest of Adelaide, a total of 7 nuclear tests were performed. This is out of control. What about if Russia came and hit your country with 7 nuclear bombs? See, we called them tests back then. Today we call them nuclear bombs. There's no difference. They're the same thing. The nuclear test, a detonation, is no different than Russia hitting you with a bomb, but it never hit your city. Oops. Just because the bomb didn't hit your city don't mean the radioactive fallout didn't, see? Not only that, it hit every city on its way across your country, then it went across the ocean, hit every city it came through over there. Do you see how stupid the narrative of nuclear weapons are? Do you see how idiotic nuclear tests? Now, they knew what they were doing when they were doing these tests. They knew they were radiating the entire country. Those scientists, those academics, those people working at it. But yet they continue to do that over and over and over and over. Not only that, they've done 7. 7 in somebody else's country. Got a hate on for you. They didn't do it in their own country, did they? Right? Then they went to the French Polynesian Islands and done tests, yeah. But they didn't do it on their own country that we know about. Because they knew what would happen. Because they understood the effects. These people should be all rounded up and put up in The Hague, in the International War Crimes Tribunal. Every academic out there involved in nuclear should be rounded up and put into a prosecution mode. That's what they will do in the near future. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about this. Whether I existed or not, that is what will happen in the near future. A lot of people like, no, I can't see it. I don't care what you can't see because you don't know. You haven't seen the things I've seen. You don't understand the things that are happening and why I do what I do. I do what I do because this is not a game. It's not a joke. This is not a what if. This is not a maybe. This is not a perhaps. This is not a fiction or a fable. And that's why I have to do the things I do. That's why I have to gather the documentation that I gather. That's why I'm arrested over and over. That's why I'm attacked and demonized and defunded over and over and over. By the way, thanks to everybody that was donating and have donated recently. Only got a couple of weeks, or maybe less than, a couple of weeks, and I can't do my appeal. I don't raise enough. They won't do it without money. And I'm just, what do? Do I walk away from that? Got any idea how wrong that'll be? See, this is not me. It's not. This is about stopping all of you. It was an attempt to, wasn't it? Besides attempt to kill me 6 times. Let's burn it off. We only got 6 minutes left. The trouble and mystery, complete collapse of the sardine population. We only got 6 or 7 to get through, and I'll come over and say hi to everybody. Trouble and mystery, complete collapse of the sardine population on the west coast of Canada around Vancouver. Complete collapse, 2013. Experts, humpbacks whales are rarely seen, and they're telling. Now, the pictures I got from Cape Scott last year, when I done the West Coast, the 5th expedition, we done open ocean. Look, I can't even believe that happened. I can't believe we done that. I got the documentation. We're doing a documentary on it. It's pretty well wrapped up at this stage, but I got to refine it, obviously. And I've been making films for now, almost 10 years? Hardcore, too. I'm not no slouch. I'm not no amateur, okay? So it's really hard for me to come up with something innovative because I've done so much. It's hard to be innovative. But I don't want to be innovative in this story that I'm going to do in a documentary. I just want to tell that story. There's no way to tell the whole story. The documentary is only going to be about 40 minutes long at best. But don't worry, I'll be making lots of documentaries because I got so much material from the coastline, so much underwater footage you can't even wrap your mind around it. Sardine population plummets along U.S. West Coast. Collapse of the species are feared. Canadian Pacific fishermen caught no sardines in 2013. 14, 15. Same thing with the squid. Yeah. Well, they caught some, yeah, certain parts, but everybody else didn't. Boats weren't paid for. Moorages at wharves weren't paid for. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Children couldn't go to summer school. It's been total chaos the last couple of years here in Canada. Sea stars began ripping itself into pieces like a horror movie. Now, I was up in Queen Charlotte's, Haida, formerly known as the Queen Charlotte Islands, last year, right? And I hung up with the divers for 2 months, and we talked about this before, I know, but a lot of people probably never heard the story, where the divers approached me in total panic one evening, and the flora, one morning, on the radio, I went over to see what was going on. They were freaked out. And then that night, several of them come aboard the boat and sat down and told me. The ocean floor was covered with sea star legs, and they were wiggling, and there was no bodies. And it freaked them out. That freaked them out. These are hardcore commercial divers. Hardcore. A lot of my old cronies, right? These are hardcore. That blew them away, trust me. And the last headline, 1, 2, 3, 4 to get through. The truth must be told, columnists. Fukushima is a major global threat to all living flora and fauna. And Gunderson, the only thing saving us is the internet. Top scientist, Fukushima is the most terrifying situation I can imagine. And I've seen a paper which says this is Canada's sweetheart, Suzuki, who's fallen for grace now. Fukushima is the most terrifying situation you can imagine. I've seen a paper which says bye-bye Japan and evacuate North America. West Coast is viewing before it goes after quake and the rods are exposed. Well, it's gone. I showed you that earlier in the video, right? It's gone. Alaska, 2 to go. Alaska, 28% of the polar bears with skin lesions. Now, we know 100% of the polar bears recently in Antarctic are emaciated, starving to death. But 28% of the polar bears in 2013 with skin lesions and hair loss and thyroids, like symptoms in the seals and the walrus, also had the same thing. Surprisingly high mortality of muskox. We also know the caribou died off almost 1/3 of the herd in northern Canada. Surprisingly high mortality, or Alaska, wherever. Surprisingly high mortality of muskox, weak immune system suspected. High rates of embryo deaths and bad eggs for geese. Now, we know there was, I can't remember the species of birds, with the big tall neck on it. Not the cranes, but the pelicans. There was 22,000 of them. They only had something like 10 baby eggs 2 years ago on the California coastline in certain estuaries. And for the last one, work at Fukushima plant to go on for 10,000 years. Nuclear expert. It's longer than the human history. And this is a professor of nuclear engineering in Korea. And so no matter how you try to paint the picture, no matter how you try to do it, Fukushima is one of the most frightening things imaginable. What do I got done? Come back, Dana boy. Sometimes I do weird shit. I'm getting better at correcting it. Where is everybody to? Yeah, hi folks. Samuel. Shawnee Ken. Jan Brooks. Jay. Yeah, it's the apocalyptic stream that never ends. It'll end when this world wakes up and gets busy. I doubt it'll ever end, because how can this story go away? How can the death of the Pacific disappear? How can an extinction event be not something newsworthy? How did we ever evolve to this stage? My cigarettes don't got 7,000 chemicals. The half-life of a lamb chop is... oh, you're not up on the screen? I'm sorry. The half-life of a lamb chop is 125,000 years. That's funny shit I've heard in a long time. I'm Thirst, Jake, Raphael, Jan Brooks, Miss Milky the Clown. And Jan's been busy for a couple of days. Took good care of me in the last couple of days, that's for sure. You'll find her link below. Oh, she's commenting with her original account. That's her Miss Milky the Clown 1, original, and she has Miss Milky the Clown 1. CJ, hi everybody. Yeah, thanks, Celine. Karen, Ellie, Samuel, Pitbull, Mouse. I'm scared of Pitbull Mouse. Karen, Pitbull Mouse is sympathetic to dogs, and you've seen the studies where every dog died in every study. It's terrifying for people who love animals, I'm sure. Nip Killer, I get some rest. Slacker. Top police hurt in the parking lot, writing down our license plate numbers. It is news, Dana, and we just don't get the news. That's right, Jake. Yeah. And Janice says she's going to be repost over at Miss Milky the Clown original site, not Miss Milky the Clown 1, but you want to keep on top of both of those sites. She has 2 different sites, and you'll find links at her site. And just put a 1 on the end of Miss Milky the Clown, you'll find her other site. You'll also find links below in my description at Beautiful Girl by Dana under this video. Hi, Kiss. And everybody, yeah, thank you, Elaine, so much for putting the time in again tonight. I'm just going to make sure I said hi to as many people as I could. Hi, Tracy. I see Tracy there that time. Was that Trace? Was banned. Well, you smurfed up, didn't you, Trace? That'll teach you. Good stuff, Elaine. Awesome. And Pour the Machine. Rad Royce, yeah. That's a good one. Hi, everybody. Lee. Yeah, you're free now, but you weren't back then, Lee. No worries. Yeah, you're definitely free. I should have mentioned that when I was talking about it, by the way. That was my fault. Just going to make sure I said hi to as many people as I could. Adam. I thought I seen an Adam there. Yeah. And disaster, not an accident. That's right. Yeah. No, we're preaching to the choir for sure. Hi, everybody. Hugs for everybody once again. I can't do it all, and I'm not trying to. But some days I couldn't do it all, and so I still found other things to do. Let me see if I can find another song to burn out on. I'll put my headphones on just for sure. And once again, we made it through another show. I'm Dana Durnford in the background, making big noises. Remember, the documentation is up there at the nuclearproctologist.org. Not supposed to do that. I'm supposed to be slow. So I don't know what I'm doing. It keeps doing that. Take care, folks. Hugs for everybody. Don't forget, Dana do love you. I am trying my best. I am dedicated. I am fearless. And I have what it takes. And these people better get their act together before this planet finds out, yeah? Hugs, everybody. Take care, folks.